Hi there, it's Yoga Bloom Lab online with tips and techniques for the knees. So we're just going to give you a quick overview today of two situations in the knee that we see often in our yoga classes. And I think it's good to know more about your knees. We need to know about the knees to be efficient yoga teachers, and also because we have a lot of knee problems everywhere. So I'm also going to go through Valgus and Varus, which is the knock-kneed and bow-legged situation that we can often see with people with knee issues. And that is where Varus is where the knees tend to move out, and Valgus is where the knees move in. So I'm just going to go through some quick anatomy of the pelvis. So we have the pelvis here, and we have the femurs. They're attached. You see that they're attached sort of more toward the front than they are to the side. They're not attached to the side here. We're going to see that in a minute in the live model. So they're attached a bit in the front, and they're externally rotated. And what happens when it meets the knee, when we have the femur, the top of the femur and the bottom of the femur, and it gets into the lower limb, we've got the tibia here and the fibula, and then the patella, this little capsule, can you see it? That sits on top. So we're going to work with some live models here and show the knee and show how we can at least begin to recognize what's going on, and just a tip to help your students find their center with their knee. So let's come on in. We're going to have Melissa here and Caitlin. So this is Caitlin, and she is one of my students, a yoga teacher from North Carolina. She came to California to visit, so she's here in Yoga Bloom Lab. And this is Melissa, and I met her in Bangkok, but she's actually from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. So we're just getting an international crowd here to show us the knee. And hopefully we can get people to know more about their knees. So I'm going to show you here, without cutting off Caitlin. We're just going to go through some basic anatomy. So we have the pelvis here, and so she's got her pelvis in her position. You see that? And the femurs, if you see on her body, they're actually going to be sitting almost in the front, not to the side. So we think that our legs start here, but they actually start in the front. So if her pelvis is like so, the femurs are actually going to be sitting here, externally rotating. The femur bone comes down, and there's a bit of an internal that happens to meet the bones on the bottom. So if this is her femur here, you see, what happens in the lower limb, there's the large bone of the tibia, the smaller bone of the fibula, and the patella that sits on top. And if you've ever had knee issues, I think that you will know where your patella is and all those ligaments and things that surround it. So we're going to show you here. Melissa, I'm going to bring Melissa in just a little bit tighter here, so you can see that as she lifts her knee, I'm going to put my leg here so she can stand on it. And you see what she's going to do is her femur, right, is across the top. And then as she gets to the top, she can feel the bones of the end of the femur. So if you see what she's feeling now, is she's feeling across this top bone, and she's getting to these two ridges. Do you see that? She can feel the ridges of her actual knee. Then she can feel below another bone and the two edges of the bone. So I don't know if you can see this. Yeah. And then what happens is if she goes wrong leg, if she goes laterally to the outside, she starts to feel this bone here, which is the fibula. Okay, and that connects down to the ankle. So the knee is really critical, because if she has hip issues or if she has ankle issues, it often will show up in the knee. So we're just going to go through some things to recognize in your students with the knee. Okay, so let's just go stand up, and we're going to have both the gals show us what we call Varus and Valgus. So the tendency in somebody that is bow-legged is that they will tend to externally rotate the feet, because the angle of the bone, the femur head, is moving out. You see that rotation? And so she'll tend to stand with her feet more like a ballerina in first position, because this is the action, and you'll see that in American cowboys, right? They sit on horses, they tend to get really bow-legged. Now, and then in Caitlin's body, you'll see that her knees want to come in, because in her situation, it's more of an internal rotation of the femur, and it tends to put the knees together. And she might even tend to stand with her toes even more pointing in. It's just the position you can see that makes sense just by nature of the bones, because Melissa's are going out, so the feet are going to turn with it, and Caitlin's are moving in, so the feet are going to turn with it. So this is valgus, and this is varus. Okay then, so we're not going to make them stand like that too long, because it might mess up their own knees. What we're going to do is we're going to show you a tip for how to work to fire and engage the quadricep, which is critical in both situations, because this quadricep has to fire if her knees are coming in, and the quadricep has to fire if the knees are going out. So I'm going to give them both. We're going to cut off their heads just for a moment so you can see their knees. And we are going to give a block to Caitlin, and she's going to put this block like a Pez dispenser. So what's happening now is the action that we're asking her to do is to squeeze this Pez. Now, yes, that's turning her, one would say she's turning inward. However, what it's forcing her to do is fire and engage the whole quadricep. So the quadricep is probably going to feel perhaps more tired, because they're overworking in one direction or the other. And so as she fires this by pressing in with the block, by pressing it in, up, and backwards, she's really going to be moving and getting the quadricep to work all the way out laterally. That will start to take its effect by lifting the knee and pulling it in the direction that you need to go. Now, in Melissa's situation, she'll take the block and she does the same Pez action, and you can see for her especially, if we ask her to really squeeze the block inward, backward, and upward, so as though she were taking the Pez all the way up in, that's going to really fire these legs to move, wrapping around. As the legs wrap around, it'll take this whole bottom leg and start to move it in, which will take its effect on the knee. And the effect shows up on the patella, okay? So the little patella is sitting in front, right? The patella. And what you can see often in your students is that this on the knock-kneed will tend to be moving in, okay? And this on the bow-legged will tend to move out. You have to get good at seeing. You may not see it right away, but it becomes a way that you can see what's going on, because you're not always going to have them both doing the same thing. You might have a student where one knee is just moving a little bit more out and the other knee is moving in. So it's important to get to see. Now what we're going to do is we're going to have them both turn to the side, and they're going to fold into Uttanasana. Okay, and as they fold into Uttanasana, gosh, you guys are like the Rockettes folding in unison like that. So as you can see here with Melissa, she's standing pretty well on her plumb line, but her tendency could be to go backward. And that would be, especially if the hamstring were less open than you'd want it to be, right? So that you're going to kind of move out of the way. But then if she comes forward, she'll actually be standing on her plumb line, and as she squeezes the block, this is wrapping the inner thigh, and it's getting the quadricep to work as well, so that the double action of the quad and the hamstring can come into play instead of just overworking on one or the other. Now in Caitlin, what we're going to see is we're going to have her come and, let's just say, have her come up. So straighten your arms. And then she's going to just act like she's going to overtuck and go back. Yes. So round even more, yeah. So especially if this area is not open, the tendency again, as you can see, is that she'll go off the plumb line. She's going back. and rounding here. So I have her up on blocks so that she doesn't have to go so far. So we're going to bring her forward here. And then she's going to really turn from the pelvis and stick her bum out. Yes. And then as she folds down, you can see again that she can get this action of the hamstring without overdoing and the action of the quadricep moving. Now what happens if both of these gals push back and tip back with their pelvis, what happens is the knee is going to potentially hyperextend and take the brunt. So we really want to get the action of both of the bodies to be as much in their plumb line as possible. Now, they're just going to squeeze the pes and inhale up. Come on up. And we're just going to, again, refer to the valgus and varus. Let's just turn around. And we'll see that with Melissa's body, if she was, you can just dump the block. With Melissa's body, if she tended to be more bow-legged, varus, the feet would tend to externally rotate. It would almost be as though the legs would want to bend, like an American cowboy, right? Just got off his horse. And in Caitlin's situation, the valgus, that the tendency with the knee moving in would force the foot to come in, and it would compress on both of them. It would be too much action on the patellas. Okay? So we're just going to have these gals sit down and just say thank you to them for showing us their knees and acting like valgus and varus. So remember, varus is the bow-legged, or beautiful Melissa in our situation, and valgus is knock-kneed, or beautiful Caitlin. So like olive oil or the American cowboy, hopefully you'll get to learn valgus and varus. Hopefully that was helpful, and we'll see you next time on Yoga Bloom Lab. Know your knees.